The General Hospital recap for Friday, September 12th, shows that Sonny Corinthos and Britt framed Drew Kane for the judge bribe, while Jason Morgan chastised Anna Devane for her betrayal. At the cafe, Emma Scorpio Drake discussed her strategy with Giovanni Gio Palmieri. Emma knew Professor Henry Hank Dalton's schedule, so she surprised him with a slice of his favorite cheesecake when he stepped in. Professor Dalton ultimately received a phone call regarding a package on its way, so Emma thought it entailed animal experiments and felt she'd soon have him where she wanted. However, Gio had bad news for Emma about missing out back after receiving reports on her disappearance. Liesl Albrecht woke up at GH after taking some smelling salts and realizing Britt Westbourne was present in person. Albrecht embraced Britt and acknowledged she had a lot of questions about how this was possible. Britt promised to tell them later and got a hug from Nina Reeves. Britt discovered out Ben aka Rocco Falconeri was in the hospital and plainly wanted to see him, so she was irritated when Dante Falconeri and Lulu Spencer got in the way. Lulu and Dante wanted to talk to Rocco first, so Britt returned to Nina's apartment. Liesl pressed on answers right away, so Britt admitted that she had been approached about her research position just before Heather Weber's attack on the pier. The attack was real, but Britt was in on faking her death since she didn't want Liesl to see her deteriorate due to her illness. Albrecht was furious that Britt had led her to believe that her own daughter had died in her arms. Liesl ended up slapping Britt in the face in a fit of wrath. Back at General Hospital, Lucas Jones stitched up Rocco before Elizabeth Baldwin made up a new protocol. Rocco was delayed long enough to ensure that the coast was clear for Britt. Rocco returned home with Dante and Lulu, so they sat him down with Charlotte Cassadine and revealed that Britt had arrived at the hospital tonight. Rocco was unhappy that he had been kept away from Britt, but Lulu and Dante wanted to take their time with everything. In Anna's office, Jason insisted on speaking with her privately. After Carly Spencer left, Jason confronted Anna about Jocelyn Jacks. Anna apologized for keeping Jocelyn's WSB status from Jason, but she pointed out that Jack Brennan put her in a difficult situation. Spilling would have meant facing treason charges. Anna guided Jason in the direction of Jocelyn, but he felt manipulated. Anna wondered what Jason would do now that he knew everything. Jason wasn't going to tell Carly since he told Jocelyn he wouldn't, but he was still angered by Anna's betrayal. When Anna pressed for further information about what happened in Croatia, Jason told her to ask Brennan and stomped out. In Australia, Jocelyn and S. Vaughn returned from surfing on Bondi Beach and they went to bed together. There was some discussion over how strong their bond was after almost dying, but Vaughn said Brennan couldn't know. Brennan burst through the door, startling both agents, prompting Vaughn and Jocelyn to draw their firearms on him. When Jocelyn and Vaughn discovered it was Brennan, they lowered their sheets, only to discover they had been busted under them. Brennan presented Mr. and Mrs. Nash a minute to get ready before grilling them on the objective at the Five Poppies Resort. Jocelyn and Vaughn described Britt's dilemma before discussing their failed cover, which Brennan revealed was due to Colette Moreau. Brennan asked how Vaughn and Jocelyn were still alive, so Joss revealed that Jason had come to their rescue. That bombshell had Brennan reeling and left him with even more concerns, so Jocelyn assumed Jason's presence at the resort was tied to Britt. Brennan was furious with Jocelyn and Vaughn for allowing their basic recon mission to go so far off track. Back in Port Charles, Britt visited with Sonny in his office, and he confirmed that when Judge Eva Heron's account was reviewed, it appeared that Drew was behind the $1 million move. Carly arrived to report that Jason had returned and described seeing him at Anna's office, prompting her to disclose why she was there. Carly informed Sonny and Britt of her threat to kill Drew, which she needed to prepare for. There was some debate about Michael Corinthos, so Britt wondered if Carly was actually trying to divert attention away from him. Carly didn't believe Michael was guilty, but she was concerned that Drew would take him down nevertheless. Over with Elizabeth again, she surprised Lucas by saying Britt was alive. Once Lucas was convinced, he wanted to call Brad Cooper and alert him. Liz interrupted Lucas and informed out that Brad could have been involved in Britt's fake death. According to General Hospital spoilers, Brad and Lucas may cross paths again soon, so be prepared for some awkwardness. Make CDL your #1 source for amazing General Hospital spoilers, updates, and news. General Hospital spoilers for Monday, September 15, 2025 indicate some twists. For one thing, Britt Westbourne and Liesl Albrecht have a falling out. Anna Devane has new proof. Drew Kane also successfully manipulates Martin Gray. Continue reading to learn more about what will happen in the next episode of ABC's soap opera. Britt Westbourne's outburst. Let's start with Britt, who has just returned to Port Charles, and surprise, she is alive. While she did share a touching embrace with Liesl, things quickly went south. Britt bursts while alone with Albrecht and Nina Reeves. The brunette declares, "I am the monster you raised me to be." It sounds like she is holding a big secret and attempting to protect everyone. The question is, what is this secret, and why did they want everyone to assume Britt had died? Martin Gray manipulated Drew is awake in the hospital after being shot and having surgery. But the man is still as nasty as he always was. The congressman has vowed to imprison Michael Corinthos. Drew will now control Martin. Martin seemed to have finally seen Drew's true colors and was walking away. However, during a hospital visit, Drew warns Martin that he must ensure that the police never see that evidence. Anna Devane's evidence. General Hospital spoilers for Monday, September 15 suggests that Anna receives new evidence. Is this the evidence Drew wants Martin to get rid of? In addition, a preview clip for the next episode shows Anna informing Harrison Chase of some important information. The commissioner claims that Drew is now Justine Turner's concern. Jason Morgan's insistence. In addition, Jason Morgan will pay Carly Spencer and Sonny Corinthos a visit. The right-hand man will suggest that someone went to great lengths to fabricate Britt's death. Will Jason tell Carly that Jocelyn is a WSB agent? Carly once made him pledge not to hide any more secrets from her, particularly any involving the children. Fans may expect Marco Rios to confront Jen Sidwell. Furthermore, Jack Brennan is upset with his agents. The WSB chief informs Vaughn and Jocelyn Jacks that their little prank would cost them. Which narrative are you most looking forward to watching in the week of September 15, 2025? The city of Port Charles was buzzing with its typical undercurrent of secrets, power plays, and convoluted relationships, but the most recent scandal to hit its elite circles was unlike anything the area had seen in years. Sonny Corinthos and Britt were at the center of it, two individuals whose names were well known in both respectable and shady parts of the city. Their most recent ploy, a premeditated conspiracy to accuse Drew Kane for bribing a judge, had sent shockwaves through the neighborhood, exposing loyalties, breaking confidence, and triggering a barrage of allegations. Jason Morgan, Sonny's lifelong buddy and enforcer, found himself caught in the crossfire, dealing with the pain of betrayal from Anna Devane, a woman whose moral compass he previously admired. The fallout was nasty, brutal, and highly personal, entangling everyone in a web of duplicity that threatened to upend Port Charles's fragile balance of power. Sonny Corinthos sat in his darkly lit office at the back of Pozzolo's, the Italian restaurant that doubled as a front for his less savory activities. The fragrance of espresso lingered in the air, but the atmosphere was far from comfortable. His dark eyes, piercing and calculating, swept over Britt, who reclined nonchalantly against the wall, scrolling through his phone with the ease of a man who knew he was untouchable. Britt's reputation as a technologically competent fixer made him an ideal partner for this project. They had worked together to devise a plan so complicated that it was virtually flawless. Drew Kane, the Quartermain family's golden boy, was their target, a man with a clean-cut reputation and political ambitions who threatened Sonny's power over certain judicial outcomes. Harold Grayson, the judge in question, was no saint himself, having been known to accept bribes when the opportunity arose. But pinning it on Drew? Sonny considered that a stroke of genius. The plan was straightforward in its brilliance. Britt, with his talent for digital manipulation, had created a trail of evidence, including bank transfers, encrypted emails, and even a blurry security camera video that looked to show Drew meeting with Grayson in a dimly lit parking garage. The money trail led directly to an offshore account linked to Drew's name via Britt, who used a shell business that appeared to be real enough to pass examination. Sonny had made sure the right people were aware of the evidence, a few murmurs to the press, a tip to the feds, and Drew was suddenly under investigation, his reputation collapsing faster than a house of cards in a windstorm. The beauty of it was that no one suspected Sonny or Britt. They were overly cautious, seasoned, and distanced from the paper trail. Drew was caught off guard. He had spent years rebuilding his life after prison, establishing himself as a renowned businessman and contender for public office. The Quartermaines, his convoluted family, had reluctantly supported his campaign, seeing it as an opportunity to reclaim their dominance in Port Charles. But now, with headlines screaming about corruption and bribery, Drew's dreams were fading away. He sat in his ELQ office, staring at the news ticker on his laptop, his jaw clenched in fury. His phone buzzed constantly, reporters, lawyers, family members, but he ignored them all. His mind was racing, trying to figure out how this had happened. He had not bribed anyone. He scarcely knew Judge Grayson other than a handshake at a charity gala. However, the proof was damning, and the public ate it up. Across town, Jason Morgan was facing his own storm. He'd always been Sonny's right-hand guy, unwaveringly devoted and eager to cross lines that others wouldn't dare to. But this time, something felt off. He had learned about the frame job from a PCPD contact, and the farther he looked, the more nervous he felt. Sonny had not informed him about the idea, which was uncommon. They had always relied on trust, a friendship formed over years of shared risks and sacrifices. Jason's instincts told him there was more to this, and when he discovered Anna Devane, the police commissioner and a lady he had grown to like, was involved, his trepidation grew to outrage. Anna's involvement in the incident was unclear, but Jason had heard enough to piece it together. She had spent months investigating Grayson and constructing a case against the crooked judge. She had met Sonny somewhere along the way, and instead of taking him down, she struck a bargain with him. Or so it appeared. The details were fuzzy, but Jason's source said Anna had told Sonny about Grayson's vulnerabilities, allowing him the opportunity to implicate Drew. In exchange, Sonny agreed to keep crucial details about Anna's history hidden, information that could jeopardize her profession and reputation in Port Charles. For Jason, this was a betrayal of all he thought Anna represented. She had always seemed to follow the rules. It was difficult to accept that she had sold off Drew, a man who had done nothing to deserve it. Jason confronted Anna late one night in her office, which was eerily quiet save for the hum of fluorescent lights. She remained rigidly behind her desk, her eyes suspicious as he stormed in. "Tell me it's not true," he whispered quietly but firmly. Anna did not flinch, but her stillness spoke volumes. She attempted to explain, her words deliberate and measured. She hadn't intended for things to escalate this far, she explained. She had only exchanged information with Sonny to safeguard someone else, someone she was concerned about. But Jason didn't buy it. "You knew what he'd do with it," he murmured, his blue eyes locked on her. "You gave him the ammunition, and now Drew is paying the price." Anna's expression softened briefly, a glimpse of guilt flashing through her eyes, but she soon regained her calm. "Sometimes you make choices you don't like to protect the people you love," she told me. Jason shook his head, his jaw tightened. "That's not an excuse." Back at Pozzolo's, Sonny was feeling the heat. The frame job was functioning, but cracks were starting to appear. Drew's legal team was persistent, questioning the evidence's legitimacy. The offshore account was secure, but Britt misjudged the tenacity of ELQ's cybersecurity experts, who were now investigating the digital trail. Sonny wasn't concerned, yet. He has been in tighter situations before and always came out on top. But Jason's absence began to grate at him. His pal hadn't been around much since the scandal broke, and when they did speak, Jason's queries were pointed and penetrating. Sonny recognized the gleam in Jason's eyes. It was the expression of a man who could smell a lie. Meanwhile, Britt remained unaffected. He thrived on turmoil, so this was just another game for him. Sitting at a corner table in Pozzolo's, he sipped a bourbon while scrolling through encrypted texts on his phone, keeping track of the inquiry. He had done an excellent job of covering his tracks, but he was not foolish. If the scheme failed, he'd be out of Port Charles before anyone could point fingers. Sonny, on the other hand, was too established to flee. This was his town, his dominion, and he would fight to maintain it. Britt recognized it, but he wasn't going down with the ship. As the days went, the anxiety in Port Charles increased. Drew's campaign was in disarray, with his image splattered across every news channel as the poster child for corruption. The Quartermaines were circling the wagons, but they couldn't protect him from the public wrath. Monica, his mother, was upset and promised to find out who was behind this. She suspected Sonny, everyone did, but proving it was another story. The evidence against Drew appeared to be conclusive. Monica's intuition told her there was more to this, and she was not going to let her son go down without a fight. Jason, meanwhile, was battling his own problems. His devotion to Sonny had been the foundation of his existence for decades, but this time seemed different. Framing Drew was more than simply a business, it was personal. Drew was family, in a twisted manner, and Jason couldn't ignore the suspicion that Sonny had crossed a line. The more he considered Anna's role, the angrier he became. She had always presented herself as a force for good, but he suddenly saw her in a different light. Her betrayal was about more than just Drew, it was about everything Jason believed in. Trust, once destroyed, was difficult to rebuild. Anna, for her part, was engulfed in her own remorse. She had not wanted things to turn out this way. Her bargain with Sonny was a desperate decision motivated by a desire to safeguard someone close to her, someone whose safety was more important than her own ideals. But the expense was larger than she had anticipated. Drew's demise was on her mind, and Jason's rage wounded harder than she wanted to admit. She had always admired Jason, even when their worlds intersected. His moral code, albeit odd, was strong, and she had now lost his trust. She told herself it was worthwhile, that she had completed her duties, but late at night, when the precinct was silent and her thoughts were loud, she was unsure. The turning point came when Drew's team discovered a flaw in the security footage. It was faint, almost invisible, but one of ELQ's computer experts detected a flicker in the timestamp, indicating digital meddling. It wasn't much, but it was enough to raise questions about the evidence. Diane Miller, Drew's lawyer, seized on the situation, filed petitions to have the footage re-examined. The officials agreed to look into the matter further, despite their initial reservations because to its high profile. Sonny became aware of it through his own contacts and summoned Britt to his office. "Fix this," he replied calmly but firmly. Britt nodded, but for the first time, his eyes flickered with apprehension. He was good, but he was not perfect. Meanwhile, Jason was conducting his own digging. He didn't trust Sonny's account of events, and he certainly didn't trust Anna. He began tracking the money, utilizing his personal network of contacts to locate the offshore account. It led him to a Cayman-based shell business with Sonny's fingerprints all over it. Jason did not confront Sonny, yet. He needed additional evidence, something substantial that would compel his friend to come clean. But as he dug deeper, he understood how far Sonny was willing to go to safeguard his empire. And Anna? She was in deeper than he had expected. The city was like a powder keg, ready for a spark. Drew's followers rallied around him, alleging he was the target of a smear campaign. Sonny's opponents smelt blood in the water and saw a chance to weaken his grip on Port Charles. Anna walked a tightrope, attempting to preserve her power as commissioner while keeping her personal secrets hidden. What about Jason? He was split between loyalty and justice, the past and the truth. As the inquiry into the footage progressed, Britt worked tirelessly to cover his traces. He cleaned up servers, rerouted IP addresses, and added new levels of misdirection. But the pressure was increasing, and he could feel it. Sonny, meanwhile, was losing his calm. He shouted at his lieutenants, questioned his decisions, and drank more than normal. The empire he had established was under threat, and for the first time in years, he felt exposed. Drew, bolstered by the latest revelations, refused to back down. He gave a press conference, his voice firm, declaring his innocence and vowing to fight the charges. The public, as fickle as always, began to waver. Perhaps he was not guilty after all. Perhaps there was more to the story. Monica watched her kid with both pride and worry. She knew Port Charles, its underbelly, and knew that whatever was behind this would not give up easily. Jason's encounter with Sonny was unavoidable. It occurred late one night at Pozzolo's, after the establishment had closed. The two guys stood across from one another, the air heavy with unsaid accusations. "Have you done it?" Jason inquired, his tone calm yet icy. Sonny did not blink. "You understand how this works, Jason." Jason stiffened his jaw. "Not like this." The silence that followed was deafening, a chasm forming between them. Sonny tried to explain and justify, but Jason didn't listen. He went out, leaving Sonny alone in his dimly lit office. Anna, too, faced a reckoning. Drew's crew began questioning her about her Grayson probe, and accusations circulated about her relationship to Sonny. She knew the truth will eventually come out. She could try to run and hide, but the walls were closing in. Late one night, she sat at her desk, staring at a photograph of her daughter, Robin. "I did it for you," she said, but the words seemed empty. The scandal wasn't over. The evidence was unraveling, but so were the bonds that had previously bound Port Charles together. Sonny's empire was in jeopardy, Britt was on edge, Drew was battling for his life, and Jason was caught in the crossfire, divided between the man he'd always been and the man he needed to become. Anna's betrayal had set everything in action, and now there was no turning back. Port Charles was a community based on secrets, and this one threatened to bring everything crashing down. The truth was out there, buried in encrypted files and whispered deals, but finding it would be costly. For Sonny, it might mean losing everything he has created. For Britt, this may mean a one-way trip out of town. Drew saw it as an opportunity for redemption, but only if he could make it through the storm. For Jason, it was about determining the boundary between devotion and betrayal. And for Anna, it was about accepting the implications of a decision she could never change. The coming days would be difficult, full with revelations and reckonings. The frame-up was a gamble, a power play that had gotten out of hand. As the truth began to emerge, Port Charles readied itself for what lay ahead. Nobody would survive untouched, and the city would never be the same. Britt had always taken pride in her ability to remain calm in the midst of chaos, but that afternoon she found herself standing in the center of her office, shaking hands holding the edge of the desk so hard that her knuckles became white. She believed she could contain the weight of her decisions and the load of secrets she'd been carrying for weeks, but as the walls closed in around her, something inside shattered. The collapse began slowly, like a fracture in a dam that builds until it breaks, and then there were tears streaming down her cheeks, curses flowing out under her breath as she cursed herself for being involved with something she should never have touched. It hadn't started with her, but it was going to end with her, and the thought made her want to scream. She'd been drawn into Drew's circle months ago, against her better judgment, and told to look the other way, to remain silent about matters she should have reported. He had promised it was only temporary, that he was working from angles no one else could see, and that the outcome would justify the means. But now she spotted the flaws in his account, and her medical profession, reputation, and even her tenuous hold on stability were all hanging by a thread. Britt slapped her fist on the desk, sending papers across the floor. Her voice rose in a guttural, broken yell, asking no one in particular why she had ever believed Drew's assurances. She thought of her father, of all the mistakes she'd vowed never to make again, and she saw herself falling into the same patterns, being used as a pawn, protecting the wrong people, and justifying sins that could never be justified. Despite her disintegration, she knew Drew wasn't simply thoughtless. He was concealing something, burying truths so deep that if they were revealed, the repercussions would rage through Port Charles like fire. She had seen the documents and seen discussions she was not allowed to overhear. He wasn't simply violating the rules, he was completely rewriting them, concealing his involvement in schemes that made even her blood run cold. However, Brennan was a wild card. His involvement had been more discreet, until now. He had been circling Drew's cover-up like a cat circling its prey, waiting for the best time to strike. And when he eventually exploded, it wasn't done subtly. Brennan had never been one for controlled reactions, and when he grasped the truth, how completely Drew had wrapped himself in the deception, his rage erupted. He stormed into the penthouse with a presence that made the air feel menacing, his eyes flashing and his voice harsh enough to shatter glass. He blamed, demanded, and flung Drew's lies back at him. Brennan addressed Drew's excuses with evidence, anger, and the weight of someone who has been wronged far too often. The shouting became more intense, with echoes bouncing off the walls, as two men engaged in a struggle not just of words but also of survival. Drew's cool demeanor began to crack under the bombardment. He attempted to recast it, positioning himself as the one who held everything together and protected people from larger threats. But Brennan didn't buy it. He recognized the cover-up for what it was, self-preservation masquerading as sacrifice. The outburst of passion was more than just anger, it was a signal that Drew's time hiding in the shadows was coming to an end. Sonny hadn't intended to stroll in at that specific moment. He'd been following his own threads, wary of movements that didn't add up, relying on senses honed during years of treachery. But when he walked into that room, he was frozen by the image of Brennan with his fists clenched, Drew surrounded and scrambling for words, and Britt's tear-streaked face in the doorway. For once, Sonny Corinthos, a man who'd seen it all, was taken off guard. The shock hit him not just because of what was happening, but also because of the implications. If Drew was lying to Brennan, and Britt was breaking down as a result of something unsaid, the game was bigger than Sonny had anticipated. He trusted Drew more than he should have, relying on him when alliances changed and loyalties moved. But in that moment, Sonny saw the contours of treachery written on Drew's face, the silent desperation of a guy who had crossed too many lines to come clean. The hush that followed Sonny's arrival was heavy enough to suffocate. Britt wiped her face, Brennan paced like a caged beast, Drew attempted to keep his breathing normal, and Sonny just stood there, eyes darting from one to the other as he pieced together the bits. The unspoken truth rested between them, something huge was going to break. Britt's outburst had shattered the veneer, exposing every hidden fact. She muttered an apology that no one could understand, her words twisted in sobbing as she confessed just enough to make Sonny's chest tense. She admitted to keeping certain information from him, such as Drew's whereabouts and decisions she had not questioned when she should have. The remorse in her voice was palpable, and Sonny's amazement turned into something colder, suspicion. Brennan grabbed the opportunity, channeling his rage into a weapon directed directly at Drew. He insisted Sonny realize the reality and stop giving Drew the benefit of the doubt. He painted a picture of the cover-up with such venom and precision that even Sonny couldn't miss it. Drew, cornered more than ever, shouted out in defense, arguing that he was doing what was necessary, that his decisions were the only way to keep something worse from happening. The meeting devolved into turmoil again, with Britt crying, Brennan yelling, and Drew scrambling for excuse. Sonny stood in the center, his heart pumping and his mind racing as he tried to figure out who was lying, who was protecting whom, and how many more secrets lay buried just out of reach. The astonishment lasted long after the shouts subsided. It pursued Sonny into the night, into the quiet corners where he attempted to make sense of everything. Britt's collapse revealed more than she knew. Drew's cover-up crumbled quicker than he could mend it. Brennan's explosion lighted the match, and Sonny's disbelief was the spark that threatened to ignite the entire city. The question was not whether the truth will be revealed, but when, and who would be standing when it happened.